worried about my daughter getting this disease. And I said, oh, okay, well, let's think about this. And I actually played the auto harp and I hummed to her, and I said, draw what your impression of how, here's a mandala, do a mandala, draw this, I'll draw this circle, that's who you are, whole and complete, draw what your impression was. And she drew a rainbow around the circle and left the centre in the middle, empty, and she said, I'm worried about that empty centre. I said, okay, let's go back to the therapy room, and I had some drums there, and I said, let's do some drumming together. And we're going away. She said, I can't cry. She said, I haven't been able to cry for 8 years. Suddenly she started crying because we were drumming. And that broke everything for her. And then we started a long 5-year therapy program that has continued to have an effect. And that was back in 2004 or something. So, you know, this is a long time later when that happened. Now, how can we explain that in terms of science?
I'm trying to think of a name.
Somebody will probably come up with enough.
Janet and Paul Atkin, who wrote it, or Godkin or something, but I've got the book at home. I'll look for it.
Now, I just wanted to say the sequel to that was that she went back to her psychiatrist and she said, I need to go off my drugs. And the psychiatrist listened to her, looked at her and said, we gave you the wrong diagnosis. You haven't got schizoaffective disorder. You can't possibly have it because you've gotten better. And then 15 years later, she had one more episode, only a short one, but she went back into hospital. The doctor in the hospital gave her the same diagnosis. She came out of there, she went back to her normal psychiatrist who said, that was the wrong diagnosis for you, you're perfectly okay, and she has been ever since. So, you know, these are things that are just not explainable in science. I mean, this is a person who, you know, she didn't fit the mould. And we can't just typecast everybody into that one mould, can we?
But it seems to have to do with feeling safe and respected.
Respected and listened to.
And listen to it, and you take it seriously.
And take it seriously and say, okay, you had these, I'll sit with you with these, I'll walk with you with these, and we'll just be together.
Well, that's what they do in shamanic societies.
Well, that's why I mentioned shamanism, because I know that that's what I do with many cases. Because it is shamanism, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
drumming and singing.
Anthropologists used to think that shamans had schizophrenia or something. But then when they looked at them more closely, they realised they were high-functioning individuals. And therefore, even though they had similar symptoms, they were actually guided through those symptoms, because the symptoms in that culture, or those cultures, has a framework, has a spiritual framework. And therefore, if somebody starts acting that way, they say, that person's probably meant to be a healer or a shaman, therefore they will support them. And they won't question anything they're seeing or experiencing, they'll just sit with them in it. And eventually they probably will become a shaman or a healer and be a much more high-functioning individual. So it could be in the West that these people, they're experiencing this, and I had voices from when I was 9 to 11, but I didn't tell anybody. But people are experiencing this, perhaps like the collective unconscious or God or whatever you want to call it, is calling them to be something more, but the trouble is there's no support in the West for that to happen, so they end up medicalised. They end up worse off, because I think non-Western countries actually have a better outcome for schizophrenia than Western countries, because they're not medicalised.
Yeah, that's
so I think, you know, even though whatever you want to call a God or spirit is calling more people to be that, crazily enough there isn't the support mechanisms and mythical structure to deal with any of that. So I find that pretty odd that, you know, we don't have it, yet it seems to be happening more and more. As if Spirit is saying we need more of these people, but, you know, a lot of them are just hitting roadblocks.
Well, that exclusion of spirituality from Western culture is really quite a psychotic thing for our society, and it produces a whole lot of social symptoms. I mean, depression and anxiety and isolation and loneliness. This sort of recognition of shamanism as a point of contact to a mysterious reality is something that's sort of partly touched on in institutional religion, but it's really suppressed and controlled, wherein the I suppose the pre-literate societies, that sort of approach was much more respected.
Sure. I mean, you do find it in mystical traditions.
I do think that medication, psychotic and depressant medication is
Sorry, we've all got to catch the same bus.
Sorry. I'm sorry about that. I was trying to. I'm sorry about that. I wanted to kind of.
I know, well, we got into this heavy discussion, but can I just say that in my work in neurological disorders, there's been a lot of evidence that long-term use of antidepressant, and this is general, I'm not saying specific, long-term use of antidepressants and antipsychotics is not good for people, not good for the brain. And we need to really think about that.
Yeah, this is real. I've been on medication since 1991 and I'm still on it.
Yeah, well then it's good for you.
But, well, the thing is, you know, I can take the risk of going off it and relapsing, which I don't want to go through.
No, I wouldn't either. I'd do what
you know, and it's like, yeah, would I function better off this medication, you know, that I've been on, and I live very slowly, you know, I can't do a lot, you know, would I be better without it? But it's a risk, and
it's a big risk.
You know, and you go off it and then maybe it doesn't work the second time around, or, you know, and so it's a problem, and there are anti-psychiatry movements, like people who have been on medication for 30 years who come off it, and people who are called, you know, people who have been in the mental health system who call themselves survivors of the system, who are against medication and say this biomedical model is completely wrong, this is trauma, and where medication is not the way to treat trauma. That may be a simplification, I don't know, but, you know, medication, I mean, I don't know, you know, I think it plays a role. I think it's important.
Oh, I'm not saying it doesn't play a role. All I'm saying is that I think that we need to rethink how we're doing it, and it be integrated better, I think.
Yeah.
And I do think that there are, in psychotic episodes, it's very important to have medication. They are very useful and very helpful. I'm still, I mean, it's really good in your case that you were able to still take it after all those years, and I think that's fantastic. And then there's a lot of people that can, but then there are certain individuals who can't, and if they're typecast into, you've got to have this for the rest of your life when it's actually causing damage. And I think each person needs to be looked at individually.
People respond differently to
They
different
do.
Medications.
That's all I'm saying.
One person will respond differently to the same medication at different times, and it is guesswork how these drugs are going to work.
And I mean, it's like in a shamanic culture, shamanism doesn't always work either, and medication for some people who are indigenous would probably be better for them than shamanism. So, I mean, you know, we've just got to get it right somehow.
I know people, you know, and I think, oh God, I wish I'd gone on medication, because I think their anxiety is so bad it's crippling their life, and I think maybe medication would help, you know, and it's not something you say to someone, you know, it's like, but it's like, you know, it does improve people's lives, but you know, people are over medicated as well, and also the anti. This is another one of my peeves. The antipsychotics haven't really improved in the last decades, and a lot of people are over medicated. You know, like you see someone begging with their head down like this, you know, Like, and you go and talk to that person, they're a normal person, just medicated to the eyeballs.
That's right.
You know, and if they
Exactly.
weren't, they could, you know, function, but the medication has side effects, and you know, I don't, it's like maybe we had better medication.
There's psychoactive substances, I mean, psilocybin and ayahuasca and all those are proving
Yes.
to be very effective in different areas like trauma. Ayahuasca, psilocybin is shown to make people more open to other people, so substances like that seem to
There's a lot of research going into using LSD type stuff to treat.
Yeah.
They're talking about smaller doses, but I freak out because I kind of think, oh, you know, because
Even just marijuana has been found to be very useful for pain and
yeah,
calming people down.
and you see someone with Parkinson's shaking
Yeah.
like this.
And marijuana is very
They
good.
smoke a joint and they just relax and then say, oh, I want something to eat, you know. But at the same time, you give pot to someone like me, and I smoked it from the age of 15. I gave up in my early 20s. But I'm rocking in a ball, you know, paranoid like anything, and
Oh, that's right,
You know.
and it's all individual. But even in the Parkinson's field, I mean, they're against marijuana. You just don't mention it half the time. And yet, we all know that dyskinesia can be because there's not the right mix of the levodopa drugs that will help a person, you know. And you see somebody all over the place, and you know that they're over-medicated with levodopa. So, yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to, we should finish off now, it's 10 o'clock. And Shauna, you've done a fantastic job, well done, and it's been great to have you here tonight. And this is a certificate of your life membership, and I've signed it for you. And this is your certificate of appreciation and a little token gesture of maybe you'll have you again next year for
I just thank you, everyone. Thanks for being. Sorry, thank you for asking me,
No, you've done well.
and thank you because you know it was really nice.
And you've kept me awake.
Oh,
I'm the world's worst.
Come talk to us again at the end of the year or
Next year.
about what you've discovered this year.
Yeah. We'll keep